No Name by Wilkie Collins, dramatised by Ray Jenkins, with Sophie Thompson as Magdalen Vanston and Jack May as Captain Ragg. Episode 1. March 1846. Combe Raven House in Somersetshire.
Mother! Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Late again.
Nora, love.
Good morning.
Magdalen was born with all the senses...
Except a sense of order. Good morrow, Miss Garth. I'm starving.
And what harm has the concert done for you? What form of suffering has last night's dissipation wrought?
Suffering? Don't know the word. I'm ready for another one tonight, a ball tomorrow and a play the day after. I love pleasure.
Ah, beware. Men, some to business, some to pleasure take. But every woman is at heart a rake.
You she is. If you're all rakes, Miss Garth, the sexes turn topsy-turvy and the men'll have nothing for it but to stop at home and darn the stocking.
Not a bad idea. How do you do, Papa?
Let's have breakfast.
I'm the rake Miss Garth means. I want any amusement that puts me into a new dress, plunges me into people, illuminates me and sets me in a tingle. Anything as long as it doesn't mean bed at 11 o'clock.
My dear.
Good morning, Andrew.
They enjoyed themselves amazingly last night. More than I did. All a bit above my mark. Nora, when we had that crash-bang for 40 minutes with 3 stoppages, what did they call it?
A symphony, Papa.
Oh, you old god. Number 8 by the great Beethoven. Ta-dum, ta-dum, ta-dum.
Oh, no.
Oh, Thomas, the postman. I'll do it, Papa. The key.
Yeah, a library with my other...
I'll go.
You really should check Magdalen, my dear.
Exactly what I've said myself until I'm tired of repeating it. She treats Mr. Vanston like some larger order of Newfoundland dog.
You're kind to us in everything else, Papa, and you make kind allowances for Magdalen's high spirits, don't you?
Thank you, Nora. She's an unbroken filly. Let her caper and kick in the paddock to her heart's content. Time enough to break her to harness.
Voila. 2 for Nora.
Oh, thank you.
3 for Miss Garth.
Oh, thank you.
And 6 for you, Papa. How red your nice old bald head'll get with the worry of answering them. The Bristol Theatre's open, Papa. I just saw it in the paper in the library. If you don't let us go, I'll imitate that singer. Oh, New Orleans. Who do you know there? Mamma, you... What, Papa?
Nothing.
There must be something.
There is nothing in that letter that concerns you. Let's just eat.
What can have happened? What did Papa mean by being cross with me?
May I ask what right you had to pry into your father's private affairs?
Right. I have no secrets from him. What business has he to have them from me? I consider myself insulted.
If you considered yourself properly reproved for not minding your own business, you'd be a trifle nearer the truth. Now you're like all the rest of the girls in the present day.
It's Mamma.
Not one of you knows which end of us uppermost.
My dears, your father and I are going to London tomorrow.
Without us?
Yes, perhaps for 3 weeks, but no longer. We're going on important family business. Oh, don't hold me, my dear.
Mamma!
This is a sudden necessity, that's all. Now, I have a great deal to do, things to be set in order before tomorrow. Oh, my dear, please, let me go. Oh, and Don't disturb your father.
Up until the last moment, both sisters had hoped for some explanation of the mysterious family business which was to change their lives. None was offered. But nothing in this world is hidden forever.
Look up, both of you, if you please, and listen to me.
I don't care who knows it. I think we're both of us shamefully ill-used.
Magdalene.
I've ordered an excellent dinner. And in the meantime, Nora, my dear, you'll find your work and your books in the library. And Magdalene, suppose you leave off tying your handkerchief into knots and use your fingers on the keys of the piano instead. After we've eaten, we'll take the dogs out. And if I see gloomy faces grow any longer, sure as my name's Garth, I'll give your mother written warning and go back to my friends by the mixed train at 12:40.
Come here, Snap. Here, boy. Ben, come here. Oh, Ben.
Miss Garth, that man in the frock coats are following us. There must be a mile of crepe round his top hat. He keeps on Nora's side of the road. I'm not the main attraction. Don't blame me. Here, boy.
That is the residence of Mr. Vanstone, I believe.
You are addressing his governess.
And the two young ladies there, doubtless Mr. Vanstone's daughters. I recognize the darker of the two as the elder by her likeness to her handsome mother.
You are acquainted with Mrs.
The younger lady takes after her father. I assure you her face struck me. Looking at it with my friendly interest in the family, I said to myself, charming, characteristic, memorable.
What may your commands be, sir, if you please?
Is Mrs. Vanstone at home?
She's gone to London with Mr. Vanstone.
Is Mrs. Vanstone's absence likely to extend over any lengthened period?
3 weeks. Be so good, if you please, as to mention your business and name. If you have any message to leave Mrs. Vanstone, I shall be writing to her by tonight's post and can take charge of it.
1,000 thanks. I shall feel personally obliged if you will honour me by enclosing this card.
Thank you.
My name will be quite sufficient to recall a little family matter which has no doubt escaped her memory. This has been a day of remarkable surprises to me. I have found the country hereabouts remarkably pretty. I have seen Mr. Vanstone's 2 charming daughters. I have become acquainted with an honoured preceptress of Mr. Vanstone's family. I congratulate myself. I apologize for occupying your valuable time. I beg my renewed acknowledgments. I wish you good day.
Who was he? Shush, be good, shush.
Captain Ragg, Post Office, Bristol. My dear Miss Garth,
I'm writing immediately to dispose of any anxiety regarding Captain Ragg. My mother married twice. Her first husband, Dr. Ragg, a widower, arrived with 3 children, and the captain is one of them. Captain Ragg has no claim on me. It's just that to stop him introducing himself to Mr. Vanstone and taking advantage of my husband's generosity, I have from time to time assisted Captain Ragg from my own purse.
Oh, you good woman.
On condition he never came near the house. He is a man who has reduced his many abilities to disgrace. He was expelled from his regiment. He is a scoundrel, and I've written to him at Bristol. You will see him no more. Now I will set your mind to rest as to our visit to London by making one plain acknowledgement. It concerned the possibility I might again become a mother. My age, the serious illness which afflicted me after the loss of my last boy, meant consulting the highest medical authority. This we have done, and the result is it will be expected towards the end of July, and is the subject of serious future anxiety, to say the least. Dear Miss Garth, this must be kept a secret between us for the moment, if you please. Both Mr. Vanstone and myself look forward to being reunited with you all at Combe Raven on the 23rd.
But the letter from New Orleans...
Andrew Vanstone's favourite neighbour was Mr. Clare, the possessor of a magnificent library in a tiny cottage on the edge of the Combe Raven estate. There, 3 nights a week, Mr. Vanstone would dispute every imaginable subject under the sun with this pauper with a pedigree, only to meet the next morning on the neutral ground of the shrubbery and be reconciled. His 3 sons Mr. Clare regarded as a necessary domestic evil, and Mr. Vanstone as objects of hearty interest.
The only excuse which a poor gentleman has for presuming to exist in the 19th century is the excuse of extraordinary ability. My boys have been addle-headed from infancy. They appear to me to be 3 human superfluities in dirty jackets and noisy boots.
Fortunately for the boys, Andrew Vanstone superintended their education, and even found a position for Frank, the eldest.
My good fellow, he won't take it.
But he shall.
You don't look at him with my impartial eyes. He has no mathematics, no industry, no ambition. Frank's a compound of negatives.
Hang your negatives. I'll lay you any wage you like he makes the best of it.
I think I've got a guinea about the house somewhere.
I'll lay you 5 to 1 Frank turns up trumps.
It's Frank!
Frank?
But I thought he was in the north.
Frank! Come this way!
Magdalene? Miss Nora?
Mr. Clare.
Mrs. Vanstone, good morning.
Dear boy, good morning.
Delighted to see you, my boy. What are you doing here?
You haven't received the letter, sir? From my employers?
Oh, Papa never reads letters if he can help it.
I must have stuffed it in, here it is.
Papa!
The point is this. Despite your father's extreme kindness in believing me and finding me the job, my employers feel it's a waste of time keeping me any longer in employment for which I have no vocation.
Oh, but you've been there 3 years.
You were liked by everybody.
Yes.
Ah, come on, sir. Is it your fault you're not an engineer? Plenty of young men begin life with a false start. I wagered your father you'd succeed, and you will. There's plenty of time.
What did your father say?
I wasn't to interrupt him by making explanations, and I wasn't to frighten the cat, but come here and present his compliments to you, sir, and say I've come back on your hands like a bad shilling, as he always said I would. He keeps his own guinea and he takes your 5, and he hopes you'll mind what he says to you another time.
Oh, cheer up, my lad. We'll be even with your father one of these days. Thomas?
Mr. Marrable, Mrs. Marrable, Miss Marrable are in the drawing room, sir.
Oh, dear. I'll receive them. Oh, Nora, Magdalene, come and help.
Yes, Mum.
Please excuse us, Frank.
Well, I'll go then, sir. And,
No, Frank, don't go. They won't stay long. Come and smoke a cigar in the greenhouse. No, we must not be depressed. Think positive. Everybody praises your excellent manner and address. That kind of thing helps business communication with the foreigners.
Papa! The dream of my whole life is realised. I'll fly through the roof if somebody doesn't hold me down. Guess, you darling, what the Marrables are going to give at Evergreen Lodge.
A ball.
Private theatricals. The Rivals by the famous what's-his-name. And they want me to act in it. The one thing in the whole universe I long to do. It depends on you. Mamma shakes her head. Miss Garth looks, daggers. Nora's sulking. Oh, say yes, Papa, and I'll be a good girl for the rest of my life.
Don't throw away your cigar, Frank. You can stop here.
No, He's in it too.
Me?
There are two parts to be filled, Frank. One is Lucy the maid, the character I've undertaken with Papa's permission, and he won't say no, will
I
he?
beg your pardon.
And the other is Falkland, a jealous lover,
I must
with a
protest
fine
against-
flow of language. Miss Marrable and I have a turn for business, and we settled it in 5 minutes. Oh, she's a delightful girl. So impulsive, so sensible, and entirely unaffected. And it's her birthday, so come and be introduced.
But I've never tried to act.
Well, then I'll teach you.
What do you know about it?
Oh, Papa, be serious. I have the strongest internal conviction I could act every part in the play, Falkland included. Come, Frank, now.
Magdalen, I really...
Miss Marrable, who had never granted a constitutional privilege to her oppressed parents since the time she cut her first tooth, had appropriated to herself the part of Lydia Languish, and to her favoured swains the principal male leads. An accommodating spinster relative accepted the heavy responsibility of Mrs. Malaprop, and a Miss Featherstone, a lady whose age was unknown, and whose personal appearance was stout, but whose heart was in the right place, volunteered to act the part of the young, sentimental Julia, and brought with her the dramatic qualification of habitually wearing a wig in private life. To these, Magdalen and Frank were joined, and handed their parts on the spot.
I have 5 scenes. If any more visitors call today, I am not at home. Go somewhere by yourself, Frank, and read over your part, and don't let your attentions wander if you can possibly help it. I shall not be accessible before evening. Thomas?
Miss Magdalen?
Whatever else the gardener does, he is not to make any floricultural noises under my window. For the rest of the afternoon I shall be immersed in study. And the quieter the house is, the more obliged I shall feel to everybody.
Well, Frank?
I know I can't do it. May I come in after tea and hear Magdalen's views?
Of course you can. And give all our regards to your father.
Don't tell him about this acting, please. I'll never hear the last of it. Thank you.
What could you possibly be thinking of, Andrew, when you gave your consent? Surely my silence was a sufficient warning.
Oh, I don't really see how Papa could have declined under the circumstances.
Quite right. Here were these unfortunate people, 2 parts short on one side and Magdalen mad to act on the other. The Marrables are respectable people and keep the best company in Clifton. What harm can she get up to in their house? Let the poor things act and amuse themselves. We were their age once.
Andrew.
It's no use making a fuss. That's all I've got to say about it.
I didn't say to Papa, but the bad result to the acting, in my opinion, will be the familiarity it's sure to encourage between Magdalen and Francis Clare.
Nora, you're prejudiced against Frank, my love.
I know you're supposed to be jealous, yes, but not dull.
You're clever. You can see the difference. I can't.
Julia wouldn't love you if you were just dull. I'll play Captain Absolute.
Then to cure your anxiety at once, Miss Melville is in perfect health and is at this moment in Bath.
Show surprise and delight.
Nay, Jack, don't trifle with me.
She is arrived here with my father within this hour.
Can you be serious?
Frank, you should be pleased. You've got to build up to the last line when you'll be ecstatic.
Can you be serious?
No. Can you be serious?
Can you be serious?
I thought you knew Sir Anthony better than to be surprised at a sudden whim of this kind. Seriously, then, it is as I tell you, upon mine honour.
My dear friend.
Sound pleased.
My dear friend. Hello, Dupain.
No, you're calling him, Frank. He's a servant.
Oh, hello, Dupain, my hat.
That means bring me my hat.
My dear Jack, now nothing on earth can give me a moment's uneasiness.
We will not be discouraged, Frank.
I'm sorry I was weak enough to burden you with the story of Captain Rag. You'll only worry, and that's unfair.
May I ask if that's the only source for your being out of sorts?
I fear the summer. I feel so weak.
Then we must remove any anxiety we can. I'll accompany Magdalen to the rehearsals and not lose sight of her for a single moment till she's safely back in her father's house. There's no need for you to go.
So, my dear Simplicity, let me give you a little respite.
Easy with the street in Bath. It's going up crooked.
Of appearing 6 foot.
Excellent, Miss Vanston. But before let girls in my station, pause. Take a turn about the stage, thinking it.
Yes.
At the list of presents, stop. Toss your head, look pertly at the audience, tap the list. Give a little laugh.
From the said-in sign within this last month. 6 guineas and a half.
Slyer.
Within the past month. 6 guineas and a half. About a quarter's pay. Item from Mrs. Malaprop for betraying the...
And with every item as sly as you like to the pit.
2 guineas and a black paddersaw.
That's it. Yes, marvellous. Perfect.
Well, can I repeat the soliloquy now?
Indeed.
Ha ha! So, my dear Simplicity, let me give you a little respite. Let girls in my station
I beg your pardon,
be as
ma'am.
fond as they please.
This is the young
of
lady's
appearing
first attempt.
It is.
in their
Ma'am, she can
Commend
take a hint.
to a mask of
She's a born actress, if ever there was one.
arts for my
I
own
almost wish we were papists and had a convent to put her in tomorrow.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, now we've been refreshed, we'll get back...
Under a curse. Miss Featherstone has resigned her part. She heard 2 ladies characterize her disadvantages as her hair and her figure. She writes, "It is foreign to her nature to make bad worse by naming names, and the only course consistent with her self-respect is to resign."
Mother! It's going to ruin everything! Everything!
She's an ugly, bald-headed, malicious, middle-aged witch. She shan't spoil the play. I'll act Julia.
Bravo!
Oh, but if Magdalen plays Julia, well, who's to play Lucy? It'll be ruined!
I'll act Julia and Lucy, both together.
Magdalen, you'll have no time to help me.
How am I to do without you? You're Julia's jealous lover. You're always making her cry. Come tonight and make me cry after dinner. You haven't got a venomous old hag in a wig to act with now. It's my heart you've got to break. I'll teach you how.
I cannot blame you for defending him, but tell me candidly, Julia, had he never saved your life, do you think you should have been attached to him as you are? Believe me, the rude blast that overset your boat was a prosperous gale of love to him.
Gratitude may have strengthened my attachment to Mr. Falkland, but I loved him before he had preserved me. Yet surely that alone were an obligation sufficient.
It's the same girl who played
Lucy just now.
Why? A water spaniel would have done as much.
Oh, thank you.
Magdalen, what is that?
Madam, allow me to explain. The card is mine. This is not the last time the young lady will be concerned in private theatricals, and if a superintendent is wanted on the next occasion, she has kindly promised to say a good word for me. I'm always to be heard of, miss, at that address. Excuse me, madam.
Throw it away.
Oh, I promised. And that's one reason
reason for keeping it. Oh, if it does nothing else, it'll remind me of the happiest evening of my life. Come on, Nora, darling. Miss Garth, congratulate me.
We will when you've got over it.
You were superb, Magdalene.
Oh, Frank, I'm so sorry it's all over. It's Nora.
Where?
Call this evening.
Yes, I will.
Oh, luncheon time already.
Have you and Mr. Francis Clare been alone here since 10 o'clock?
Oh, how ridiculously formal. Why don't you call him Frank?
I asked you a question, Magdalene.
Oh, la la, I'm in disgrace. You haven't forgiven me for my acting last night. I couldn't help it, love. I should have made nothing of Julia if I hadn't taken you for my model. It's a question of art.
I should have thought twice before I mimicked my sister to an audience of strangers.
Exactly. Strangers. How were they to know? Oh, come, darling, don't be angry. You're 8 years older than my 18. You ought to set me an example of good humour.
No, of plain speaking. I'm more sorry than I can say, Magdalene, to meet you.
In the shrubbery at home, talking over the play with my old playmate, whom I've known since I was no taller than this parasol, on his swacky malipos.
I'm in earnest.
Oh, no doubt of it. Nobody can ever accuse you of making jokes.
I have it on my conscience to tell you, and I will tell you. I'm sorry to see a secret understanding growing between you and...
Oh, Frank, how you do hate him. What has he done to offend you?
You pirouette! For shame, Magdalene, you're treating me heartlessly.
I am trying to keep my temper. You've always been hard on me and Frank.
You talk as if your interests were won already.
Oh, what right have you to question me? Whether I like Frank or not, what interest is it of yours?
Magdalene, I've watched this Francis Clare. He's unworthy of serious feeling on your part, unworthy of our dear father's interest in him. When father was comforting him and forgiving him the other morning, I saw no shame, distress in him, only thankless, heartless relief, Magdalene. He's selfish, ungrateful, ungenerous. He's only 20 and he has the worst failings of mean old age already.
You've taken a perverse hatred. Don't, Nora. You hurt my hand.
But I shall never hurt your heart.
What have I always told you?
A great deal more than I could ever keep in my head.
I have always maintained that the one important phenomenon presented by modern society is the enormous prosperity of fools. Over our whole social system, complacent imbecility rules supreme, snuffing out the searching light of intelligence with total impunity, and hoots owl-like in answer to every form of protest. See how well we all do in the dark. One of these days, that hoot will be contradicted, and the whole rotten system of modern society will come down with a crash.
God forbid.
Well, now for the application of it to my lout. Read this.
Ah, Andrew.
Frank's got another chance. Oh! There, read it, my dear. I've been over with Mr. Clare.
Where?
London, the city. A bit of a friend of a rich cousin, that sort of thing. But a great mercantile firm.
Oh, that's wonderful.
His father's convinced that society's in a conspiracy to force him to the top of the tree.
Oh.
When?
Tomorrow. He'll be received in the office on a very different footing from that of the ordinary clerk. He'll be pushed on at every available opportunity. And the first good thing the house has to offer, home or abroad, will be at his disposal. If he shows common diligence, his fortune's made. Wonderful, wonderful news! Eh, Magdalene?
Goodbye, my dear Frank.
Oh, goodbye.
Good luck.
Frank! Oh, Frank! Take this. It's a lock of my hair.
Oh, Magdalene, I wish we had more time.
Frank. Oh, go and win.
Yes. You've always told me, sir, a man's business is to conquer his difficulties and not to talk about them. All the same, I wish I didn't feel quite so loose in my figures.
You're right.
Yes, and tell you all how I get on. Sir, I'm very much obliged for your kindness, and very sorry I couldn't succeed with the engineering. I think I would have liked it better than trade, but it can't be helped now, can it? Thank you again. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Oh, good God, Magdalene, think of it. We've known him since he was in jackets.
Spring and early summer wore away into the airless nights, cloudless mornings, and sultry days of July, the month Mrs. Vanstone dreaded.
I'm back with my lunch.
Mr. Frank!
Hear his story, all of you. It's reconciled me for the first time in my life to the anomaly of his existence. Just go on, Frank.
The house feels I need some special stimulant.
Yes.
They feel I should enter the house of their correspondents in China.
China.
Familiarising myself on the spot with the tea and silk trade.
For how long?
5 years.
5 years.
5 years.
At the end of that period, I'd return. Fit for a position of trust and justified in looking forward to a time when the house would assist me in starting a business for myself.
Wonderful!
You've agreed?
My answer has to be at the office on the 20th.
Go, boy, go!
I think it's marvellous,
Andrew, you're within your wage.
Am I heavy, darling?
Mm-hmm. But stop on your perch if you like it. Well, what business?
Well, you've always liked Frank, and Frank likes you.
Yes, he's a quiet, good fellow.
You've got on like father and son.
Certainly.
Perhaps you'll wish he'd stop in England and do as well here as if he went to China.
Oh, he has no prospects here. I wish he had, for his own sake. I wish the lad well with all my heart.
May I too? With all my heart.
What's the girl crying about? You'd think he's been transported for life. He's going away to make his fortune.
He might do much better.
How? Tell me.
He might marry me.
You surprise me, Magdalene, more than I can say.
Oh, don't say I've disappointed you. Who am I to tell my secret to if not to you? Don't let him go. Don't. He's afraid to tell his father. There's nobody to speak for us except me. Oh, don't let him go. Don't, for my sake.
Hush, my love, hush. Are you sure?
Oh, what words can say yes for me? I love him.
You're both very young.
Much younger than you and Mamma were.
Not much younger, my child. I'll go and speak to your mother.
Oh, Papa.
We don't blame you for the attachment. After all, Frank and his brothers have almost filled the places of boys we've lost.
Oh, true.
But, Magdalene, it's our duty to put it to a proper test. Frank will remain in London for 1 year more. If he fails to justify the confidence placed in him, the marriage scheme will be considered from that moment at an end. But if he succeeds, then the future his present employers have placed before him will be realized by the dowry of a young wife.
Oh, Papa. Oh, Mamma.
Magdalene, dear.
My plan is, if and when the house places a good partnership at Frank's disposal, you will give him the money to buy it out of hand. I shall limit the sum, my dear, to half your fortune. The other half shall be settled upon yourself. My will have the usual divisions. But no gloomy faces. Your mother and I mean to live to see Frank a great merchant.
Yes. Yes.
Now, come on, leave your mother. She needs to rest.
Oh, thank you, Mamma.
My dear Magdalen.
While you enlighten the son, I must consult the father.
You don't think he'll say no?
I hope he'll say yes.
Why should he say anything else? Papa?
You have nothing on your head, my dear. If you want to be in the garden, don't forget how hot the sun is. Don't go out without your hat.
Magdalen, I beg you to forgive me.
What for?
I've heard of your new prospects. I wish to set things right between us. Will you forget and forgive what happened in the shrubbery?
Heel, boy! Heel!
Oh, your face tells your news. Mr. Clare's been as heartless as usual.
Magdalen, whenever you speak of my old friend and neighbour again, bear this in mind. He has just laid me under an obligation which I shall remember gratefully to the end of my life.
Sorry.
Give me a kiss, then, and I'll tell you in return, Mr. Clare has said yes.
Oh, Papa, you frightened me.
I'll be right again tomorrow. I'm a little upset. Now let me go, dear. I have a letter to write to my solicitor. Take Snap and find Frank.
Oh, come on, boy. Find Frank. Find Frank.
Nora?
Papa?
Are you going anywhere near the post office?
Well, we can.
I've written to Mr. Pendrell, and I expect him here tomorrow afternoon. We will arrange a room for him as usual, Miss Garth.
Of course.
Now I've got an engagement at Grailsea Mill on Saturday, but I must be here for Pendrell. I'll go today, that's it. Catch the down train. Don't lose the letter, Nora, dear.
No.
I won't keep dinner waiting, Miss Garth. If the return train doesn't suit, I'll borrow a gig.
You're crying.
Oh, my love, if your married life is only as happy as mine.
Is the baby moving, Mamma?
Yes.
If Papa comes back by the railway, he'll be here in 10 minutes.
I say Papa will miss the train. As usual, he'll romp with the miller's children, gossip with the mother, then at the last moment, when he's got 5 minutes left to catch the train, he'll say, "Let's go in and look at the books." He'll find them dreadfully complicated. He'll suggest sending for an accountant. He'll settle the business offhand by lending the money in the meantime, and he'll jog back in the miller's gig.
When your father does return, we'll put your account to the test.
You're not going upstairs in this heat.
No, I'll just rest in the study till he comes. Please, don't worry.
A person wishes to see you, ma'am.
Oh, who is it?
A respectable-looking man.
Oh. You wanted to see me?
You're not Mrs. Vanstone, are you?
Certainly not. I'm Miss Garth.
I'm employed in the clerk's office at Grailsea Station. I'm sent here on a serious errand.
Serious to me?
To all in this house.
Stop. Tell me the worst and don't speak loud. There's been an accident.
The down train at 1:50.
The one Mr. Vanstone...
Yes, ma'am. I was sent here by the up train. The line was just cleared in time for it. They wouldn't ride. They said I must see Miss Garth and tell her there were 7 passengers badly hurt and 2...
7 badly hurt and 2?
Madame. Oh, gently. Oh. The harm is done. You may speak out. Is he wounded or dead?
Dead.
Oh, Mr. Clare.
Is she better or worse?
No better. If there is any change, it is for the worse.
Has the doctor given her up?
Well, he's not concealed from us that she's in danger. We can only pray.
If you believe in prayer.
Sir, at a time like this...
Pray as you've never prayed before, for the preservation of Mrs. Vanstone's life and the child's. The lawyer's expected at what time tomorrow?
3 o'clock.
Frank will be at the station and bring him to the cottage. We'll have a bed for him.
Now, Mr. Clare, what does everybody know except the children?
Oh, my love, speak to me, Magdalene. Try and cry. Try if you can speak to me.
You feel no remorse.
Oh, darling.
He wasn't serving your interests when he went to his death. Oh, he was serving mine.
Mr. Pendrell writes, if any change for the better in Mrs. Vanstone should take place, I entreat you to let me know of it immediately. It is of the last importance that I should see her in the event of her gaining strength enough to give me her attention for 5 minutes, and of her being able at the expiration of that time to sign her name.
Any such interview, madam, is impossible.
You see what importance as a lawyer he puts on...
Yes.
My mind is lost, confused. Do you think it means Mr. Vanstone's never made a will?
It can hardly imply that. Even supposing Mr. Vanstone died intestate, the law takes due care of the interests of his widow and children.
But if Mrs. Vanstone should die...
I believe I'm right in telling you that the property would, as a matter of legal course, go to the children. All that can be done has been done. The next 24 hours will end your suspense. If nature makes no effort in that time, I grieve to say it, you must prepare yourself for the worst.
The night passed, and she lived through it. The next day came, and she lingered on till the clock pointed to 5. At that hour, the tidings of her husband's death had dealt the mortal blow. When the hour came round again, the mercy of God let her go to him in the better world. Her newborn child survived her till the evening was on the wane. As darkness came, the light of that frail little life, faint and feeble from the first, flickered and went out, and the 2 sisters were left alone in the world.
I've had this answer from your employers, Francis. In consideration of what has happened, they'll allow the offer they made to stand over for 1 month.
Are Mr. Vanstone's plans for me not to be carried out? He told me his will had provided for her. Well, how can his
Wait
death...
till Pendrell comes back from seeing Miss Garth at Combe Raven. Question him, not me.
You won't expect me to go back to London without seeing Magdalene first.
You shall see her.
Mr. Pendrell, ma'am.
Ah.
I am sincerely sorry, Miss Garth, to intrude on you at such a time, but circumstances leave me no other choice.
Will you take a seat, sir, here by the window? Ah, fresh air. Please.
Miss Garth, you shall know what serious reasons I had for waiting day and night in the hope of obtaining that interview with Mrs. Vanstone, which unhappily never took place. And in justice to Mr. Vanstone's memory, your own eyes shall inform you that he made his will. There. The signature and witnesses. When you are in possession of the truth, these pages may help to preserve your respect for Mr. Vanstone's memory.
What do you mean?
If I can prevail on you to read certain clauses in it, you will make your own discovery of the circumstances which I am here to disclose. Circumstances so painful, I hardly know how to communicate them to you, and which involve, I grieve to say, the future of Mr. Vanstone's unhappy daughters.
Oh, I can't follow you. One question first. Does this will provide for the children?
When he made it.
But does it provide for them now?
It does not.
What you mean, well, you wish to spare me, but you're wasting your time and my strength. Tell me the truth, Mr. Pendrell, and tell it plainly, instantly, in your own words.
Do you remember the 4th of March?
Let me break the news to myself. Mr. Vanstone has died a ruined man.
No, far from it. He has died leaving a fortune of more than £80,000.
Oh, well.
He lived up to his income, but never beyond it, and all his debts added together will not reach £200. Let me repeat the question. Do you remember any domestic event?
The journey to London. After he'd received a letter. Yes. Yes. Magdalen mentioned a postmark somewhere in America. Yes. Yes, it's coming back. Mr. Pendrell, they went to London the next day, saying the reason was family affairs. But I suspected something was wrong. I couldn't tell what.
You're correct. There was a motive for keeping the truth from you. And all that I could do to prepare you, I have done. Let me now tell you the truth in the plainest terms. Ma'am?
It was probably only a breeze on the leaves. My nerves are so shaken, the least thing startles me. I'm sorry. Why did they go?
To be married. Miss Garth, I speak the miserable truth. There is a copy of the certificate dated the 20th of March, the March of this present year.
Bear with me a little, sir. I can't believe it yet.
If the aspect of Mr. Vanstone's character I'm about to present to you seems at variance with your later experience, bear in mind you knew him first as a man of 40. When I first knew him, he was 19.
Pray continue.
Mr. Vanstone's father was a manufacturer in the north of England. He married early, and there were 6 or 7 children. Michael, the eldest son, still living, is an old man turned 70. The last, and by many years the youngest, was Andrew. I became the family solicitor when he was 19. Andrew entered the army and was ordered out with the regiment to Canada, leaving, I'm afraid to say, his father and his elder brother seriously at variance. The father was a man of fierce temper. His son had set him at defiance, and the father declared in the most positive terms he would never see Michael's face again. Despite my entreaties and those of his wife, he tore up in our presence the will which provided for Michael's share of his father's inheritance. Meanwhile, I'm equally afraid to say, Andrew became acquainted in Quebec with a woman of great personal attractions who said she came from one of the southern states of America. She obtained an immediate influence on him. He was just 21. She led him on with merciless cunning, and he committed the fatal error of his life and married her. Now, she'd been wise enough to persuade Andrew up to the marriage ceremony to keep their proposed union a secret, but when 3 months later a chance disclosure exposed the life she'd led before her marriage, but one alternative was left to her husband: instant separation. One of Andrew's superior officers, a Major Kirk, if I remember right, found him in his quarters, a loaded pistol by his side. Major Kirk saved the lad's life and hushed up the scandalous affair by a compromise. The marriage being perfectly legal, and the wife's misconduct prior to the ceremony giving her husband no claim to his release from her by divorce, it was only possible to appeal to the wife's sense of her own interests. A handsome allowance was secured her, provided she never appeared in England or used her husband's name. She accepted all other stipulations and, to my knowledge, never annoyed Mr. Vanstone. All she wanted when marrying him was money, and money she got. Andrew sold out of the army, and the first intelligence that reached him on his return to England was news of his father's death. To my surprise, a will appeared among his papers, maintaining his vindictive purpose towards his eldest son. Now, speaking in round numbers, the division of property stood thus. Before the mother's death, Andrew had £70,000, and Michael, the eldest, nothing.
Oh.
As we get on from past to present, my dear Miss Garth, keep in mind the terrible inequality of Michael's inheritance and Andrew's. Andrew's first impulse was to propose dividing his inheritance with his elder brother, but there was one serious obstacle in the way of this, a letter from Michael waiting for Andrew in my office, charging him with being the original cause of the estrangement between him and his father. Andrew wrote to his brother in the most forbearing terms. The answer received was as offensive as words could make it, the offer being regarded as bribery. Michael had inherited his father's temper. After this, nothing more could be done. Michael withdrew to the continent, inheriting his mother's fortune. Michael is now passing the close of his days either in France or Switzerland, a widower with one son. Andrew and he never met again or even communicated by writing. They were dead to each other. You can now estimate Andrew's position. Possessed of a fortune, he was alone in the world. In sheer despair, he let his own impetuous youth drive him on. A woman's falsehood had driven him to his ruin. A woman's love saved him. Let us not speak of her harshly, for we laid her with him yesterday in the grave. I was with Andrew at the ball where they met. She produced the strongest impression on him the moment he saw her. Circumstances were against her from the start. Unhappy at home, her family and friends were mean, underhand people in every way unworthy of her. That meeting that night decided their fortunes. Other meetings followed, and when the confession of love escaped her, Andrew took the one course of all others most dangerous to them both. His frankness and sense of honour forbade him to deceive her. He opened his heart and told the truth. Generous, impulsive, passionately fond of him, she saw, and saw truly, she stood between him and his ruin. She decided and saved him. She set herself from the first to accomplish the one foremost purpose of so living with him in the world's eye as never to raise the suspicion that she was not his lawful wife. This was accomplished in Ireland, Devon, and finally here. They neither courted nor avoided notice. They were simply happy in themselves, in their children, and in their quiet rural life. Nothing occurred to disturb their happiness until the announcement of his wife's death reached Mr. Vanstone in that letter from America which you saw placed in his hand.
I have one question before you go on. My heart aches for the children of my love, more than ever my children now. Is there no hope for their future?
I can only place the truth before you. The marriage their parents recently entered into destroyed this will and has left the daughters dependent on their uncle.
Mr. Michael Vanstone?
Yes.
Their father's bitterest enemy? Oh, how can it be?
Give me your attention for a final few moments.
Were you in the secret of their marriage when it took place?
Oh, unhappily, no. I was at sea on my way to the West Indies, and I didn't return until the middle of June. Barely a month later, the first indication of his marriage reached me in a letter he'd written himself on the day of his fatal accident.
We posted it.
The reason was the attachment between his daughter and Mr. Clare's son.
Yes.
Mr. and Mrs. Vanstone agreed Mr. Clare should be told before things went any further. In the course of conversation, Mr. Vanstone mentioned the financial arrangements he'd made and naturally referred to his will. Mr. Clare, remembering his friend had been married in the March, asked when this will had been executed. On receiving the reply 5 years since, he astounded Mr. Vanstone by telling him the document was worthless.
How?
A man's marriage destroys the validity of any will he may have made as a single man. The will has to be remade as a married man's. At Bristol I heard of the crash, and then of Mr. Vanstone's death. I was met here by Mr. Clare's son. At the cottage I drew up a will for Mrs. Vanstone. Mr. Vanstone having died intestate, 1/3 of his fortune would go to his widow. As children born out of wedlock, the daughters would have no share. The one chance left was that their mother might sufficiently recover to leave her 1/3 to them. Her death left the infant who survived her by a few hours possessed of the whole of Mr. Vanstone's fortune. On the child's death, the next of kin to the legitimate offspring takes the money. The whole £80,000 has virtually passed into the hands of his paternal uncle, Michael Vanstone. Miss Garth, we must look facts squarely in the face. The law leaves Mr. Vanstone's daughters at their uncle's mercy. They are nobody's children.
That was episode 1 of No Name by Wilkie Collins, dramatised by Ray Jenkins. Magdalen Vanstone was played by Sophie Thompson, Captain Ragg by Jack May, Nora Vanstone by Elizabeth Mansfield, Miss Garth by Kathleen Helm, Mrs. Vanstone by Joe Kendall, and Mr. Vanstone by Michael Graham Cox. Peter Woodthorpe was Mr. Clare, Paul Downing was Frank Clare, the manager was Christopher Good, Miss Marrable, Susan Sheridan, Mrs. Marrable, Joanna Mackey, Mr. Pendrell, John Moffat, and the narrator was Philip Sully. The music was by Peter Brewis and was played by Maurice Cambridge. The director was Janet Whittaker.